Yeah? Okay. This is my clicker?
That's your clicker.
All right. So now that we've had lunch, we can start talking about the Internet of Things and mobile security, since that's something that every one of us are familiar with. Up on the board, I have a picture here. And has anybody not heard of Pandora's Box? So I don't see any hands. So I'm going to explain it for a minute, just to kind of get us in the mood. I'm a storyteller. So Pandora's Box, here's how the story goes. It's Greek mythology. They hand Pandora a box and they tell her, don't open it, because if you do, you'll expose all the evils of the world. Well, just like all of us, we got to peek just in case something good is inside. Well, Pandora opened that box and she exposed the evils of the world. Hence, the reason why we have bad things supposedly that happen. Well, as we sit around it, you can sit and say, well, what in the world does Pandora have to do with mobile device security or the Internet of Things? It has a lot to do with it. How many people in the room do not have a mobile device with them today? It's the only time you'll probably see no hands go up. We are walking around with our own digital Pandora's box. And every time we use it, we are sending messages and doing insecure things, exposing the evils of the world. It's just they happen to be about ourselves. And we're going to talk about some of that today. So I would like to introduce you to Dr. Martin Cooper, who is the inventor of the cell phone. And I'm going to ask some of you to give me some answers. This is where the teacher mode comes out in front of you. So how old is this phone? Anybody want to guess? About 35? I hear 60. Okay. Okay. How much did this phone cost? 600? Do I hear lower? Higher? How much did it weigh? What did it do? Well, let's talk about it for a minute. So, Martin Cooper, Motorola Dynatac, 1973. The cost then was $3,995. And for those of you that like to Google things, if you do a calculator from the cost from 1973 till now, you're looking at over an $11,000 cell phone. And it weighed 2.5 pounds, which it got the nickname of the brick. And it took 35 minutes to talk. You could only talk for 35 minutes. It would take 10 hours to recharge. And the only thing you could do is talk, listen, and dial. But I have news for you. That phone is more secure than anything that we're carrying right now. Additionally, we might make fun of grandma and grandpa that are carrying around that flip phone, but they are more secure than us. So as we move along, I'm going to ask some questions. I know you're laughing. So when you leave your houses, do you lock the doors? Yes? Do you lock the door to your car when you walk away? Why do we do that? We do that because we put a security measure in place. It's the security measure, it's the physical security measure. It's that first layer of security that we put out there. If I really wanted to get into your house, I'm going to dress as a pizza delivery man. I'm going to knock on your door. When you open it up, I'm going to push my way through. If I really want to get into your car, I'm going to break into your car. And the bottom line is, as your siren goes off, the alarm, nobody ever looks when a car alarm goes off. So it'll be 10, 20 minutes or longer before anybody comes. And by then, I'll have already taken what it is that I need. We do these things as preventative measures. We put them in place. But we don't think about those same physical security measures when it comes to mobile device or mobile device security. So I have a picture of a gentleman up here. He looks pretty safe, right? So I bet we can all agree in the room that our cell phones hold our lives in it. Some people are doing mobile payments. We're logged on to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and all of our contact lists are in there and our calendars are in there. How many people, when you wake up in the morning, that within the first couple minutes, you touch your phone, whether it's to turn the alarm off, whether it's to check a message? I bet you that's the majority of the room. So it's pretty precious. I had a colleague actually tell me he would rather have his wallet stolen than his cell phone. So we have all this in place, but we think nothing about it. Walking up to this complete stranger with our cell phones logged in and say, excuse me, can you take a picture of me and my family? And I walk away with all of my personal information inside logged on. We're not thinking about it, physical security. We're not thinking about the things we do, and we have to put those same measures in place when it comes to technology. We can't sit and blame everything on people that break into our systems. We have to take some measures. So this is a question I ask. How many of you, before I ask this question, have anti-malware, antivirus software installed on your laptops, computers? That's mostly everybody. Now, how many of you have it on your phones? The number goes down always. We don't think about installing mobile applications to stop information coming into our devices. There has been over a 1,200% increase in mobile malware incidents between 2015 and 2016. They have not released the 2016 to 2017 incidents yet. And it all comes from many things, and we'll talk about several of them. How many people in here do not download apps on their phone? So I'm probably going to be the only person in the room. I don't have a single app. There's two of us. I don't have a single app on, three. I don't have a single app on my phone other than what came with it. People need to realize when they're downloading apps what it means. And there's a difference between free apps and paid apps. How many of you are downloading free apps? And that's probably the majority of everybody. You have to put things into perspective of what you're getting when something is given to you for free. Number one, I can assure you, you have not read the terms of use that come with those. If you ever get a chance to read a book, read the book Future Crimes. And it will talk about all the different crimes associated with the technologies that we're not prepared for. But one of the examples that they give in there talks about J.K. Rowling, the author that wrote Harry Potter, for those of you that might not be familiar, basically saying, when we use things like Google Docs and so forth, if she had put all her work in Google Docs, technically Google owns the rights to that. As we download these apps, we are giving the application permissions to our device. We are giving them access to our phone book, access to our address books, access to anything that's logged on. Many people keep their Facebook page automatically logged on, or their Instagram so that they can send out messages, and Twitter and so forth. If you're ever sitting at home and you get an invite, and an invite says, so-and-so has asked you to be their friend on Facebook or LinkedIn, I challenge you, especially on the Facebook ones, to call them, and I can bet you with almost 99% accuracy, they did not send you a request. If it's somebody that you didn't know, it's because you have allowed access to your device. You've allowed them to access your contact list. You're basically saying in the terms of use that I'm giving you the permissions. Most people don't realize what they're giving up. And the big thing here is it's free. So they're going to make their money off of you one way or another. The same thing with Facebook. I ask people this question all the time. How many of you have a Facebook page in here? And people raise their hand. How many of you that have Facebook pages, if they charged $29.99 a month, would you pay for it? Where are the hands? Exactly. So you'll raise your hand to say, I have a Facebook page, but I'm not willing to pay for it. So that part between having it and not willing to pay is the gap, because they're going to make their money off of everything in between. And that's our security. That's our digital dossier. And we've made it extremely easy by downloading mobile apps and everything else that we're putting on our devices as we continue to connect and connect. So one of the things, I'm not telling you don't install them. What I'm telling you is to know the permissions of the apps. You know, look up to see if what the vulnerabilities are that come with them. Just because you have an iPhone and that everything has to go through the iStore or whatever does not mean the app is secure. And just because you have an Android doesn't mean that they're not more insecure. It really comes down to reading those permissions and knowing what you're installing on the device. So we can sit back and say, well, I don't install apps. There were 3 of us in the room that don't, or I only have a couple apps. So I must be secure, especially when it comes to mobile devices. That's the furthest thing from the truth. Before I get into talking about the next couple of topics, I want to throw out more questions as our own insecurity. So we have Facebook, we use our phones, it's the first thing we touch in the morning. How many of you have your phone set to automatically connect to Wi-Fi? How many of you, so you're connecting. And if it's automatically connecting to Wi-Fi, do you know what you're connecting to? The second thing, how many of you drive to work and you put the Bluetooth on in your car so that you can make phone calls? Then when you get out of the car, you don't turn it back off. So I don't see hands, but I see faces, which means the answer is yes. So for criminals, you're leaving this open to extreme danger. I know that at Middle Georgia, I know that they've implemented mobile forensics courses at the university, but I'm here to tell you that it's beyond mobile forensics and mobile security. As you are keeping yourself vulnerable to Wi-Fi and to Bluetooth, you're letting somebody on the outside be able to grab your information from your voice messages, from anything that you're transmitting over. And what is to say that as you connect to Wi-Fi and you go to, say, Starbucks, and you say, oh, Starbucks 1, that's our Wi-Fi, but that's actually Starbucks. What could be, you could actually make a Wi-Fi and name it that. Everybody can name their own Wi-Fi. So as you're in airports or hotels, you don't want to automatically connect. And if you are, what is it that you're sending over that device as you're connecting? So connecting users, do I automatically connect? We talked about this. Do I leave the Bluetooth setting on? So it doesn't matter that I don't install apps. What are the measures that I've put in place for myself? What have I start teaching myself and the behaviors? Just like locking the car door, locking the door to our house. We've taught ourselves to put preventative measures in place. But are we doing that with our security? And if you've looked over the last several years, the number of breaches in the United States has continued to rise. They continue to rise and they continue to rise because we're making it easier and easier to steal data. And a lot of it comes down to end users. As a matter of fact, a ton of it comes down to end users. And you have to start with personal security. So we talked about some of the things with connecting to Wi-Fi. But we have something out here called Bluetooth sniffing. And this is, I want to say that it's new, but it's being used more now than it was a year ago. So is anybody in the room familiar with essentially how Wireshark works? So I have a couple hands in the room. So for those that are not, you can download Wireshark, and it should be in your security classes for those that are taking classes. And what happens is it captures packets. So anything going over an IP address, it's capturing what it is that you're doing. You can see the transmission, you can see where it's coming from. If you have attachments, you can actually go in and pull those attachments out and so forth. Well, the same thing holds true with Bluetooth sniffing. As you're transmitting information over the Bluetooth technology, you can actually do man-in-the-middle attack and pull that information before it gets to wherever it's intended, or be able to transmit that information as it's going across. So as we're using these technologies, we're not even aware that the person sitting next to you may actually be capturing whatever it is that you're doing on the device. We have to always assume, and I want to sit and say that everybody around us is always the bad guy, but we need to assume that they might be. And you have to be careful about what you're sending over there. So personal habit, just to kind of teach yourself. You lock the door when we get out of the car, we hit that button. It takes 2 seconds to go on our device and shut down Bluetooth. So as I turn my car off before I get out, the first thing I do is shut Bluetooth down, get out of my car, and then I lock it. It's starting to change habits that we do as well, because as technology has expanded and increasing, so have the capabilities of stealing information. And as we continue to go along and we continue to connect device after device, we are causing larger possibilities for vulnerabilities out there. So just a couple of stats in regard to mobile applications. 82% of applications are tracking the end user. So again, remember, whether it's free or not free, whether you're doing a paid or an unpaid app, most likely it's tracking you in some way, shape, or form, because what other reason to actually give you stuff for free other than to build it, sell it to competitors, sell it to people that want your data. 80% collect location information. And it doesn't matter if you have your GPS on or your location tracking on. Remember, you can always ping off the cell phone towers to give you a whereabout of exactly location. Think about that. If you have Wi-Fi not connected, if you have GPS not enabled on your device, I don't keep location tracking on my device. And I arrived in Georgia yesterday, automatically starts searching. It knows exactly where I am. So you don't necessarily need to have all of that turned on for it to know where you're at. 55% continually track location while the device is even turned on and you're not actually using the app. 36% know the user's device information. So on your device, you sit and go, okay, what do you mean by the device information? Well, your phone number. If you think that all of a sudden you're getting all these solicitations on your cell phone because you've purchased and you're giving your cell phone out, number as the destination to call, that's not necessarily the reason, because they're tracking the information on the device. They're tracking the IMEI number, the International Mobile Equipment Identity assigned to that device. They're tracking the IMSI number, the International Mobile Subscriber Identity. They're finding out who your provider is. They're learning about who you are. And so all these apps, when we accept that terms of use that we know nobody uses, not nobody uses, that nobody reads, we're actually accepting the terms of use. And I give an example in my class all the time, and this comes with Facebook and apps and in general. And I use the Facebook scenario. Facebook tells you that you own your data. Whatever you put out there is yours. You get to keep it, but they can do with it whatever they want. So you have a car, you're making a car payment. You drove here today. The car is sitting out front. And in the buyer's agreement, it says you own your car, but we can do with it whatever we want. When you go to leave today, your car's not out there. Well, they didn't steal it. That was part of the terms of the agreement that you signed. They can do with it whatever they want. So right now, when you went to leave, somebody felt like driving it. That's the same thing with your data. We're accepting these terms of uses. We're not reading them. And they can do with it, your data, whatever they want. A company about 3 or 4 years ago put in its terms of use a clause that said, the first person to read the entire terms of use will get $10,000. It took almost 2 years before they actually had to award that, because we know people don't actually read the terms of use. If you ever Facebook, Twitter, Instagram that's owned by Facebook, so you're going to basically see the same thing. Some of the apps that you use, read what you're giving up by using those particular tools, and you will be shocked. You'll think twice, hopefully 10 times, before you actually download information. When we're using the devices, why I'm talking so much about personal security, and it's an example that I've used, and if any of my students are out watching, which I know some are, I use it in every class, is driving a car. We have to start thinking about personal security, and everybody in this room has some interest in security, or you wouldn't be here. You're either going to school, you're in the field, so this example may personally not apply to you, but it applies to most people that you know, your family, your husbands, your wives, grandmothers, grandparents. The average user does not understand technology. The best way that I can explain it is driving a car. And I use this example a lot because to me it's the best example to get people to understand it. I drive a car every day. Some people could say that I don't drive it well, but I do drive the car every day. I get in and I put the key in and I turn the car on and it starts. And I put it in a drive and, well, I got to put it in a reverse first, or I drive through my house. Put it in reverse, put it in a drive, and it goes. I know when the gas gauge goes down, I need to pull over and I need to put some gas in. I know that if the tire pressure light comes on, I need to pull over and I need to ask somebody to put the air in. If the oil light comes on, I know that I probably need oil. And I can do all these things, and I can keep that car up and running. And I do that all the time. I've been doing it for years. But if you asked me and you said, hey, Karen, why when you put gasoline in the car runs? I have no idea. I just know it does. Why when the oil light comes on, you put oil in, it works? Why when you press the gas pedal, it goes, and the brake, it stops? I have no idea. But yet I drive that car every day. I've been driving for years, and it works. The average users for technology can drive the car. They can use the laptop. They can use the computer. They can use their phone. They can download an app. They can upgrade Adobe. They can upgrade whatever it is that they need, Norton antivirus, etc. But if you ask them what makes that computer run, how is that antivirus software keeping your computer secure? What are the ones and zeros? What are the vulnerabilities? I can tell you that the average user is me driving the car. They use it every day, but they have no idea why things work. And that is the reason why we're all going to have jobs for a very long time too. And that's the reason why we're having vulnerabilities, because people, end users in agencies, whether it's an agency, a corporation, a nonprofit, they're not thinking about that. The biggest type of training that needs to go out is to end users. End user programs need to be implemented in all organizations, whether they're a government entity, nonprofit, or a corporate 500 company. It's training the end user to start understanding the tools and not just be the driver of the car, but to start understanding at least some of the things that keep you safe, knowing that it's important to get your brakes checked and understanding why. You know, if I don't, I could go down a hill and off a cliff. But you need to put that in the same perspective as security. So education is extremely, extremely important. And if I can't have a bigger piece to take away with, is to really think about that, is not everybody knows technology. As we're talking about physical security, and we're talking about these devices that we need around us so often, I just want you to look at some of these numbers. 123 cell phones and smartphones are lost or stolen each minute. Now remember, all of our information is in there. Now, granted, we have password protection on our devices, and it's getting so good that most people cannot get into the device. But what you're failing to understand is they don't necessarily need to get in. Those devices itself are worth a lot of money. If I asked you, would you walk down the street, men, with 5 $100 bills sticking out of the back of your pocket? 8 $100 bills. You would tell me, I wouldn't do that. Women, would you keep 8 $100 bills sticking out of the top of your purse as you're paying at the checkout counter? Your answer would be no, but yet we stick our $800 phone in the back of our pocket, sticking out of the top of our purse with all of our personal information in it. And we don't think about it. We turn away, we leave things on the counter. We're not thinking about it. Those devices may be locked, and we might not be able to get into some of them. You can get into others. And my students, a lot of them don't even keep passwords on their phones because that takes too much time for them to hit those passwords so they can get the next tweet out, etc. So we leave these around and we don't think about it. I could take your cell phone, go to a cell phone caching station and get $400 or $500 for it. It's become a commodity. I get this, I can cash it in like an ATM machine. 120,000 mobile devices are lost annually just in Chicago taxi cabs. That's not even Washington, D.C., that's not New York, that's just in one place. Major city transit authorities receive over 200 lost items per day. That is a statistic out of the Washington, D.C. metro. 200 per day. And that's what gets turned in. What about the ones that just go in the pockets that get lost or stolen? I know me, I reached about 20 times a day to make sure my device is still there or that I can actually grab it very quickly. As we talk about mobile, we think of mobile devices as our cell phones, but the reality is it's way beyond that. For those of you, most people know what the Internet of Things are, and I have a definition up here, but in general, it's the interconnectivity of objects that we continue to purchase and buy and connect and connect and connect without authenticating. So we buy smartwatches, we are connecting whatever it is that we buy, and yet we're not authenticating one device to the next. We're not actually putting the security measures in place. And what are we connecting them with? Wi-Fi. We've got fridges and cars and lights. I don't even understand some of the smart things, appliances that we have there. I have a smart oven. In my world, unless that smart oven is going to go to the fridge for me, get all the ingredients, mix it together, cook it, and then put it on the table for me, it's kind of useless. But I could turn the crock pot on. I don't understand the reason to have a crock pot that's connected to the Internet of Things. I can lower my thermostat in my house. Well, there's something called a programmable thermostat that's been doing that for you for years without me connecting my device that we've already talked about. We're connecting to Wi-Fi automatically. We're leaving our Bluetooth on, etc. So as we continue to do these things, we have to think about the vulnerabilities. And I have a couple pictures of what we consider part of the Internet of Things. We have our smartwatches and they're connecting. And we have our smart parking meters. And I don't know if they have them here, but you can pay with your phone and make it easier so that you don't ever have to reach out and pull quarters out or dollar bills out. And our newest and greatest things that are out here are our drones. On campus at Robert Morris, we have drones that do flyovers to take images. We're very close to Pittsburgh International Airport. When you get to a certain part of our campus, those drones drop because we're using authorized drones with the right technology in it to pick up airspace. Well, not everybody's doing that. Just like guns and everything else, we can build our own. And technology's changed so much that with 3D printers, I can print my own. And I don't need to have all the sensors and so forth out there. And as we're connecting, where are those drones connecting back to? They're connecting back to that mobile device that we're not securing, and that we're connecting to Facebook, and we're downloading apps that are free, that have access to everything. Yet we're gonna put our house connected to it, as we've given up all of our rights by continuing to download these tools that have access to my Pandora's box. If you have Facebook, go in and look at the apps that you've downloaded. Once you download an app or anything onto the phone, you're basically accepting them, especially in Facebook in the world that we use, you're accepting them as a friend, which means you gave them the right to have total access to your Facebook page or to your mobile device. We've given up those rights as we continue to download this stuff. Yet for some reason, I don't see why people can't connect. I've given up these rights and I'm connecting my world to that same thing. That means I'm leaving it open for them to also come in. So one of the things that have been breached in the last couple of years are baby monitors. So baby monitors are connecting in the houses, part of the Internet of Things. And people have received messages. They'll hear a voice come over and say, I'm walking out of the house with your child right now. Now, they'll get up and run in and it's nobody, but it's the point they're testing it. Not to necessarily say I'm gonna steal your child, but to see if they can. And we're connecting it back, and we're connecting it back. I'd like to take a couple minutes to put things in perspective, if you don't mind, and talk about the Jeep Cherokee hacking that happened a couple years ago. And I know we heard in the morning about, I don't want to hear about some of the hacking things, and there might not be a correlation to the hacking with the Jeep Cherokee in our banking industry, and I hope there never is. But there is in the realm of how easy it is, and I'm going to have you watch a short video, and then I'm going to explain to you what actually happened. Through the Internet of Things, our cars have become part of mobile technology. So if you're learning mobile forensics, you're going to eventually be analyzing a car.
It's not fun to have your 2-ton SUV's brakes hacked just as you're parking in front of a ditch.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on. Oh,
That's what I've learned from Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek, a pair of hackers who have spent the last year developing a piece of software that can wirelessly sabotage this 2014 Jeep Cherokee. It hasn't been altered in any way. There are no devices attached to it. But like many thousands of Jeeps around the world, it can be remotely hacked over the internet through a cellular connection to its entertainment system that would allow someone to take over its steering, its transmission, and even its brakes. To demonstrate that, I'm going to act as today's crash test dummy and drive it on the highway here in St. Louis, while Charlie and Chris hijack its digital systems from Charlie's house miles away. They wouldn't tell me what they had planned, but they assured me that it wouldn't be anything life-threatening.
remember, Andy, no matter what happens, don't panic.
It's not the first time I've driven a car while it's being attacked by these two hackers. But in 2013, they were in the back seat, and their laptops were wired into the vehicle through a port in its dashboard. Now they're sending the same sort of attacks remotely, and I have no idea what they might do.
He's going as fast as I've seen him, so.
So first we're going to turn the fan on him.
Yeah, let's turn the fan on, see if he even notices.
All right, something just turned on, all the fans and AC and stuff. I didn't do that. The trick started small. Oh my God. There's a picture of Charlie and Chris in tracksuits that just appeared on the dashboard. But as I drove down the interstate, things started getting unpleasant and very loud. Perfect. I can't turn it down.
This was such a fun video. Steve, okay, go
Cool.
to enjoy
And now the air conditioning is blasting, the music is blasting, and I can't see anything because of the f***ing windshield wiper fluid.
Okay, do it. Do it. Kill the engine.
So we're killing the engine right now.
It says park sense. Actually can't accelerate. I stomped on the gas, but the Jeep slowed to a crawl. It says 43 miles an hour, but I'm not going that fast. I turned on my hazard lights, but I was still stuck in the right lane with no shoulder to escape onto. Guys, I'm stuck on the highway.
What do you say?
Oh, I think he's panicking. He's not gonna be able to hear us with that radio. It's so loud.
Guys,
I need the accelerator to work again.
The accelerator will work.
It won't work.
You're doomed.
Seriously, it's dangerous. I need to move.
You gotta turn the car off.
Okay.
Now you should be good to go. Semi drove by.
All right, I'm gonna pull over because I have PTSD.
Charlie and Chris have only tested the full range of their attacks on a Jeep Cherokee. But they say that hundreds of thousands of late model Chrysler vehicles may be vulnerable through a feature called Uconnect, an internet-connected computer in the dashboard known as its head unit.
These cars, head units, expose a particular service that probably they didn't want to. It lets you do things like query it for information like the GPS or the VIN or all sorts of other things, but it also lets you just run commands.
So you have to first break into the car remotely over the cell network and then move laterally if you want to do things like send CAN messages. And those are the messages that we can use to control things like steering or the windshield wipers or braking.
They plan to release a portion of their exploit code at the annual Black Hat Hacker Conference next month. They've also alerted Chrysler, which is issuing a security patch. But they say a lot more needs to be done to protect a new generation of cars that are increasingly connected to the internet and potentially hackable.
You guys basically brought this car to a standstill while it was driving on the highway, which I may never forgive you for. And that was just like an experiment. What do you think is the worst case scenario?
We wanted to point out, to show that this attack has serious consequences for this vehicle, and so we did, attack you. But we did it in as safe a way as we could, so we didn't want you to get hurt, obviously. That's why we're working, is to make sure that we figure out vulnerabilities, weaknesses, get them fixed.
We're only two guys with one car, right? So, we can't look at every car, and we want to release this information because more people like us need to be focused on this problem.
After their stunt on the highway, Chris and Charlie still wanted to show me a couple of other tricks. Below a certain speed, they can control the Jeep steering as long as it's in reverse, pop its locks, mess with the speedometer, and, of course, disable the brakes.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on. Oh,
He's not getting out of that.
I think so.
We're going to be doing some pushing.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying. That's how you drive in the Midwest. New Yorkers don't know how to do that.
And he's a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh. And when they said they were able to hack that car from miles away, so that car was in, I believe, Missouri. Well, Chris and his buddy were sitting in Pittsburgh, probably 5 miles from where I live. So we're talking cross state lines. And this is the same technology that we're using with the mobile devices. So when manufacturers put products out that connect to the internet as part of the Internet of Things, they're not testing them. They're trying to get them out as quick as possible. So in Pittsburgh this past September, Uber launched driverless cars. So they've been testing the terrain in Pittsburgh because we work off of 2 grids at the same time. We're one of the only cities in the country that do that. Plus we have hills, and our weather changes from winter to snow to summer to fall to blizzards in about 10 minutes at different times. And so they're testing it there. And Chris currently works for Uber. He's not allowed to talk about anything, but I went to a lecture that he gave about 2 months ago on this particular thing. And what he said is, why that was part of the reason it was so easily is when they put these components into the cars or put them into the device that we're using, they're not really testing them. And in that car was a Sprint enabled device. So they were able to get into the cellular system and manipulate the car. So we have to think about this. And one of the things that companies aren't thinking about that just infuriates me as they let people do BYOD, bring their own device, is what measures do you have in place to stop employees? Do you have something like a geofence, or that when they get within that fence, that's the only time they're able to access that technology? What is it that your employees are allowed to do? Are they allowed to download apps as they're using their device for work? So when we're talking about security measures, we're talking about total understanding, where you've got your chief executive officer at the top might not be communicating so well with your chief information security officer on what happens. And they're always trying to think of the bottom dollar and what money we need to get out there, instead of totally understanding the technology needed to keep things safe so that you continue to make money. The reason that I wanted to show this video is to show you that it can be done. It's being done. And you have all of our car companies are now implementing this. So one of the things that I say to you when you're talking about personal security, when you get into your car, how many of you have a GPS? Are you typing your home address in there? Because if you are, I want to know why. Don't you know where the local McDonald's is close by or the local whatever? You're giving people extra information they can take. When you're renting a car, I say a rental car, are you connecting your mobile device to it? Because it's a great haven, especially for the federal government. They don't need a warrant once you give that car back to go and get the information off the image you just put on that computer that's as part of the car as you're putting in your directions and everything else. Me personally, I don't think I have anything to hide. I'm a pretty boring person. But when I have a rental car, I bring my own GPS, and I don't even use GPS on my phone. As you start to learn mobile forensics in your class, you'll understand why. I'm not actually using my device for very much either. But you have to think about what traces you're leaving behind. And now that you can see, if you can hack a vehicle, how easy it is it to get that information off of it. And we talked about this as we're connecting the smart houses. I put this up specifically after the Jeep, because I'm telling you, getting into that Jeep Cherokee, I'm sure is a heck of a lot harder than getting into any of these appliances that manufacturers are putting out to get to rush to market without actually testing them. And we're connecting and we're connecting and we're connecting, and it all comes down to laziness, ease of use. We want to be able to do everything from the click of a button, but you have to look at what we're giving up. And all of our car companies right now are testing cars that are driverless. Ford just announced last week that they're getting ready to build a plant in Pittsburgh, and they're going to invest $1.3 billion over the next few years. And the majority of jobs will no longer be sitting in Detroit. They'll be sitting in Pittsburgh. And that's for Ford Motor Company, because being that Uber and everybody else is coming in close, they want to go to where the testing is taking place in the area around these particular technologies. The bottom line is, if you can hack a car, we can get into your house relatively easy. And now, hello, Google. We can ask a question. Well, if you pay attention to the news, it's also being used against them as well, because what's it doing? It's recording. It's putting information. The Echo has held information on a homicide because it's actually talked to it. And we can get into some other very, very scary things. How old do you have to be, according to the law, to have a Facebook page? 13 years of age. And some people will sit back and say, well, let's think about that. 13 years of age. Well, you're 18 to sign a contract. What's the reason that a 13-year-old can have a Facebook page, but a 12-year-old cannot? Because we have the Children's Online Protection Privacy Act, that's COPA. It says you can't record or track anybody under the age of 13. Yet I'm going to put the Echo and hello, Google, into my house. Where are the mechanisms on that for the law that's in place? We're not out there. We're not thinking about this. We're not thinking about the recording. I just had dinner with a colleague of mine from PNC Bank in Pittsburgh, and they are working on apps and working with the Echo and Google to actually, I can say my account numbers and transfer money from one account to the next. That's great. But think of the technology, think of the Jeep, think of what we're connecting to, think of what we're actually transmitting. We can go on and on and on about the safety measures and the precautions, because we want things to be easy and at our fingertips. And as I go a little more, hello, Barbie. We have a lot of vulnerabilities out here. Number one, back to the COPA, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Last time I checked, most people playing with Barbie are probably under the age of 13. Most people, I don't want to say most, that are using Furbies are probably under the age of 13. He's laughing over here. He still has his Barbie. Anyway, G.I. Joe, whatever. Hello, G.I. Joe. So I'm going to tell you what my students are doing at Robert Morris. And I know Middle Georgia, if they're not already doing it, will be doing it after today. So I didn't buy a Barbie, but we bought a Furby because one of the students in the organization said, we should get a Furby and see if we can hack it. Well, they can. They can, because we connect Furby through Wi-Fi and all the things that I've been talking about and all the things about personal security, the Furby and Hello Barbie and whatever other toy that's out there we can get. So last week or the week before, we bought an Echo, and we can get that as well. So this is just a couple of kids playing around, not even in class, to see if they can, and they can. And we're going to put these toys into our kids' hands. We have child exploitation at the all-time high, sending off signals, location, transmitting information. We have to think about this holistically in what it is that we're doing as we're looking for convenience, and we continue to connect and connect and connect, and we're not looking at security measures. You've heard my bio. All of my degrees are technology. I'm a major proponent for technology and the advancing of technology, but we also have to look at that there is a limitation and there's a downside. It's just like drugs. Granted, you're never going to stop drugs from being used. Driving with alcohol under the influence, you're never going to stop it, but we have measures that we put in place to monitor, and people need to be aware of the limitations. So my job isn't here today to scare you and say, oh, we should never use this technology. It's to make the room aware and the people that are watching aware of the limitations of the technology, to say we have a lot more room for improvement. And if you take this a step further into the world of where we actually are, we have implantables that are in the body now. If you look up an article, I think it's actually called brain jacking, they could actually get into the implantable in the brain. And we're connecting these devices, and it's not going back to the doctor that put the device in. It's going back to the corporation that manufactures that device. And we're continuing to connect and connect. So more than ever, we need people out there that know the technology that can secure it. But unless we know the limitations of the technology, we're going to continue to abuse it. And not really look at ways to fix it if we don't know that it's there. So raising awareness, I think, is key. Understanding the capabilities of the technology that we use are stronger key. And getting the word out, education. So I have some preventative measures that I've listed. Check your phone bill for unusual activity. So a lot of the new scams directly hit the phone bill. I know lately I've been getting a lot of text messages with links. I've even received phone calls from myself where my phone will ring and I'll look and it's my name coming through. So if you ever done any type of internet investigations class or et cetera, or played around with tools that are out online, you can make a phone number appear for whoever number that you punch in. So I can make it look like it's coming from the same person that owns the phone. And curiosity gets you. You want to grab that line to see why in the world you're calling yourself. Unusual activity on the phone bill, I think you'd notice that pretty much. That's provided that you get a bill. A lot of people do auto pay, so they're not ever even looking at their bills. I tell people that own credit cards, call your credit card company if you haven't done so already, or log on to your online account and have them send you an alert every single time a charge goes off. It will save you. Last week, I was with a student in my office, and I got a text message. I looked at the text message. I had a $580 charge for Office Depot, and I was sitting there. Immediately shut it down. There are ways, we can't stop it. I couldn't stop them from doing what they did, but I could shut it down very quickly. So we need to start putting measures in place ourselves. Back your data up on a regular basis. So if that phone gets lost or stolen or whatever, that there is a place that you can go back and not feel like you've lost everything. Yeah, you might have lost the $800 device, but that's about it. They put precautions on the devices after so many times that the phones will automatically reset. That's great for end users, really bad for the forensics community, that they've made getting into devices harder and harder and harder. Anything after the 4S on a cell phone, anything with 4S on an iPhone, and anything after the 4 or something on an Android, you need passwords, and it's very hard to crack those passcodes. And the San Bernardino case was one that comes to mind. People sit and say, oh, well, why didn't the FBI go ahead and crack that iPhone? Well, there are many reasons. Is it because the FBI didn't have the intelligence? No, they've got some of the best encryption technologists in the world. But we have also laws that we have to pay attention to in the United States. And we have a law called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And if they would have broke into that device, we would have violated a US law, and anything they would have found would have been thrown out anyway. Understanding technology, you also need to understand the law. And as I say all the time, if I have 2 circles and I push them together, right in the middle they cross, and that's where technology and the law crosses. You can have the smoking gun. You could have found the best piece of evidence, just like the Casey Anthony case. You might sit and say, I have this piece of evidence, if I don't follow orders, the exact laws, it doesn't mean anything. And that's really part of what happened with the San Bernardino case. So they sent that phone out of the country to Israel. to have them crack it over there and then send it back. And there's other legalities and things there as well. Set the device so it automatically locks. I'm sure most of us do that anyway. But this is a big one. So you have it automatically locked, but then you're checking your phone 25 times a day. So about 2 years ago, I made it a habit to start watching everybody around me, just for fun, people that I ate lunch with. And I waited for about a month, and then I'd go up and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, Joe, 7821. I knew their 4-digit codes, every one of them, because we can't help it. We cover our hands at an ATM machine or when I'm check out if I'm using my debit card, but I have to get that message that I'm gonna punch it in, I'm gonna punch it in, I'm gonna punch it in. And I can guarantee you, as I stand here, that 4-digit code that you're punching in probably is your 4-digit code for many other things, to include maybe your bank account, other online passwords. You're giving it up. And you're not even realizing it, because we need to get to those messages so quick. So think about that also in the measure of your personal security. Stick with reputable sites when you're downloading. Read those terms of use. See what you're actually giving up out there. Keep your mobile device with you at all times. I know we try to, but really think about it. Turn on security features on the device. Know your device. I can guarantee you, you know how to drive the car. Learn it. Go read the reader's manual. If you can't sleep one night, pull it out. It'll get you to sleep real quick. Set a password or PIN, install antivirus, anti-malware, turn your Bluetooth off when you're not using it, get your Wi-Fi turned off when you're not using it. Hey, many of the phone companies have great plans right now that you don't need Wi-Fi on all day long to stream. And record the international mobile equipment identity of the device, because if it ever does get lost or stolen, that truly does help. And as Benjamin Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So at this time, I hope that I've given you a couple things to think about, that you'll maybe do one thing at least differently, or you'll at least go home and tell a little piece of what we talked about today to somebody else to get them thinking. And I know most of you will probably go and at least try to find that video and watch it again or show somebody.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Let's just wait for the mic, though, please. Mic's coming up.
So you said about the international mobile subscription. Is that what you said?
There's two numbers. There's the International Mobile Equipment Identity, IMEI, and then the IMSI. And it's just important to know about your device. And there's a lot of things that are on there. For those of you that are doing any type of computer forensics or mobile forensics, just like anything, when you image that device, it can be analyzed. One of the things that identifies that device are those numbers, and it will tell you exactly where that phone was manufactured, along with ownership, et cetera. The content of the device is on there. Different than computer forensics, where with computer forensics, you all are analyzing either a PC or a Mac. It's essentially it. They image the same, they process the same. You're going to learn one. When you finally master one, you're going to master many. Mobile forensics, mobile security is much different. Currently, you've got 22,000 devices and growing of different phones, and from when the flip phones came out to the Internet of Things devices. So learning what's important to those devices is going to be really important in any realm of security or forensics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
All the way over there. Getting your exercise.
As a preventative measure, you didn't mention biometrics, fingerprint scanners on the mobile devices. And I think Google and Apple and a lot of others have the one-time access codes where if you're going to make a change, it's got to send that to your device. Do you advocate those things as preventive measures?
I do. I do think biometrics is definitely a preventative measure, but it's also been proven that they too can be picked up. You know, one of the things, each measure you can put in place, whether it's biometrics, a PIN, how many of you changed your PIN on your phone so that someone like me doesn't know who you are, that doesn't know your PINs? I mean, most people from the day they got their phone till today are using that same 4-digit PIN. You know, and you've got swipe patterns. You know, law enforcement looks for swipe patterns. They look for DNA that's left behind. They look for all of that. So anything that you can put on any measure on any type of technology is a plus, you know, regardless of what it is.